Good morning. My name is Robert Allen, and I'm the President and CEO of the Texas Economic Development Corporation. And let me be the first to say thank you for joining us today. I have the honor of introducing the first conversation in our statewide workforce strategy series in partnership with Chairman Brian Daniel of the Texas Workforce Commission. TWC and TxEDC are developing a shared statewide workforce development strategy, an effort that stems from Governor Greg Abbott's Tri-Agency Workforce Initiative, which charged the Texas Education Agency, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and the Texas Workforce Commission to ensure that Texans are prepared for jobs in industries that power our state's powerful economy. The webinar is part of a series of meetings over the next 3 months that will highlight local efforts in winning strategies that can be leveraged statewide. Further conversations will focus on community colleges, trade schools, career and technical education programs, and statewide economic development organizations. But today, I am excited to kick things off with 3 experts from some of Texas's premier 4-year educational institutions. We do plan to save a few minutes at the end of our discussion for questions, so please feel free to submit those through the chat function. Let's get started with our first guest. J.B. Milliken is 2.5 years in as Chancellor of the University of Texas System, but he has been on the job when it comes to higher education for more than 30 years. Since he left a job on Wall Street way back in the 1980s, he has devoted himself not just to higher education, but to public higher education, because he understands that public education is the foremost provider of opportunity in America. That's certainly true in North Carolina, where JB served in a variety of important roles with the UNC system, and where he played an instrumental role in getting the largest higher education bond package in the nation's history past. It's true in Nebraska, where JB grew up and where he became the first alumnus of the University of Nebraska to serve as its president, leading that system through a decade of unprecedented growth and success. It's just as true in New York City, where JB led CUNY, the country's leading urban public university, for several years. Chancellor Milliken's career has taken him to the most rural of places, to our nation's biggest city, and now, thankfully, right here in Texas. He now leads the University of Texas system that has shaped our state for more than 100 years and will continue shaping our future for the next 100 and beyond. He's got a big job in front of him, and he can't do it alone. So I ask that you join me in giving him as much support as you can in the years to come. Chancellor Milliken is a tremendous supporter of our work at TxEDC, and I am thrilled that he was able to join us today as one of our keynote speakers. Chancellor, welcome.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for that kind introduction. You aged me a little bit. I was still in school in 1980, so I didn't leave Wall Street quite then, but that's okay. It gives me more cred maybe to have even more seniority. And I'm glad you mentioned that there are 3 experts on. I see 2 of them, Dr. Thompson and Dr. Lawley, and I look forward to hearing their remarks. I'm more of the 10,000 foot variety, and they're the pros. So you've got a great lineup, present company excluded. I want to say thanks to Chairman Daniel and everyone at the TWC as well. They're great partners of ours, and we look forward to a lot of great work in the future. So one thing we all know, and kind of the theme I think that could underlie this whole series of discussions you're having, is that Texas's greatest strength is its people. And we want to make the most of that strength by making sure that Texas workers and Texas enterprises and organizations of all kinds can compete and win and prosper. And so it's up to all of us, the people on the screen, the people in the audience, the people at our institutions, to build the kind of workforce that Texas needs for the next generation of innovators, entrepreneurs, health professionals, teachers, you name it. So that's our challenge, and everybody here has an important role to play, from early childhood education through lifelong education and retooling that will be required in this environment throughout every worker's lifetime. So that we've seen a lot of strange things in the last year. And one of the things we saw was the great difficulty that young people had in getting employment. In February of 2020, the unemployment rate for Americans aged 20 to 24 was a little over 6%. By May, it was 23%. Now it's a shade below 10, but it's still 50% higher than a year ago. So while no group has been spared during the pandemic, as with the Great Depression, workers with education beyond high school are more likely to be able to work from home and have, relatively speaking, been more insulated. But we still see an unemployment rate as of January of 9% for those without education beyond high school. So, and about half that, or a little less than half, for those with education, with a college degree, a bachelor's degree or higher. So if we have any doubts, we learned during the pandemic that the people of Texas understand the need to get an education beyond high school. They recognize what the data tells us, and they're willing to take on and overcome pretty big obstacles to make it happen. I'll just give you one example, which I'm sure my colleagues at the other university systems could give as well. So in March of 2019, the beginning of March, fewer than 20% of our faculty across the system had ever taught a single course online. And under 40% of our students had ever taken a single course. Within was 100% in both categories. For many students, this was very difficult. Some lost jobs, some were forced into family caregiver roles, some became sick. Caring and accounting for mental health of every member of our communities has and remains a major challenge for us. The pandemic also revealed challenges that Texans face with availability of internet access, whether it's broadband limitations, subscription costs, or hardware ownership. According to the Texas Demographic Center, 1.6 million households in the state lack reliable internet service. This included the homes of approximately 1 in 5 of the UT system undergraduates. That 20%, which was most likely from low-income, first-generation, underrepresented college students, the shift to remote learning presented an additional enormous obstacle. So we need to bridge that digital divide if we're going to match talent and opportunity to unlock the productivity and potential we saw some of this last year, whether it's in remote education or healthcare or working remotely. So pleased that Governor Abbott declared broadband as an emergency item for legislative consideration, acknowledging that it is necessary for every Texan, preschoolers to adults, cities, rural outposts, to have adequate broadband and reliable internet service. So despite the challenges that our students faced and the students across Texas, the vast majority continued their education. In fact, remarkably, 5% increase in graduation in May of 2020 over May of 2019. And our summer enrollment was up 23%. Now, I think that has its negative side too. That I think has a significant amount to do with employment opportunity. But at least those Texans, those young Texans that were, most of them already matriculating, used that downtime to continue their education. And this last fall, while nationally enrollments were down 2%, our enrollment across the UT system was up 2%, and 6 of our 8 institutions had more freshmen than they had the year before. So it's clear that Texans know the importance of getting an education to get a good job and have a great career. And it's our job to deliver what they need. So I want to talk a little bit about the return on investment you get from higher education. And we'll start with the investment. It's really important as parents, students think about what they're going to do and how that fits with their career goals. We've got to make sure that students in our Texas institutions don't come out saddled with unreasonable debt that drive them into making decisions that do not maximize their opportunities in the future. So I'm pleased that the UT system, our debt is about a third lower on average than the national numbers for public four-year institutions. And a number of our institutions have guarantee programs in place that at certain levels of family income, you pay no tuition or mandatory fees, including the high at Rio Grande Valley, where if you have an income of $95,000 or less, you pay zero tuition or mandatory fees. Now, on the return, this is where I think it's especially important. We've got to do everything we can to let students know all the information about their educational choices and how that matches up with career opportunities and career goals. And I couldn't be prouder of people who preceded me at the University of Texas System, who launched a historic partnership with the Texas Workforce Commission, the Higher Education Coordinating Board, and the U.S. Census Bureau. And through that work, we've become a leader in sharing this important information. And if you haven't seen this, I suggest that it would be a great thing to do, particularly if any people in the meeting today have children or friends, family that are thinking about making college decisions now. This website called CQT provides salary and debt data for all undergraduate and graduate students by degree program up to 10 years after they graduate. So students and parents can get the information they need based on actual experiences of our graduates by job location, institution, major, can tell them what the average incomes are and what the average debt level is. So we don't have to go into this without having full exposure on what the opportunities will be. Now, I'm convinced, and I'm sure Dr. Thompson, Dr. Lawley are too, that there's really no better investment that a person can make than in themselves and in getting a formal education. But the world's changed, and we've got to do a number of things to better connect our students and our graduates with the job market and the opportunities than we've done before. So I mentioned before that this is a challenging time for recent undergraduates. In the past year, hiring for entry-level college graduate positions has fallen 45%, more than any other education category. And the first job that a student gets after graduation is critical to launching a career. Those who start behind tend to stay behind. Those who are underemployed after graduation are far more likely to stay in mismatched jobs after 5 years than those who start with a real college level job. And it's no surprise that unemployment has disproportionately impacted people of color. We've seen the data on this, which is striking. Unemployment nationally among people of color with associate's degrees is equivalent to unemployment among whites with less than a high school diploma. And in the fourth quarter of 2020, an African American aged 20 to 24 was nearly twice as likely to be unemployed as a white person at the same age. But regardless of race, getting and keeping a job after college is becoming less and less about where you went and what you studied, and much more about the skills that you have. So we need to ensure that graduates acquire the skills the market's demanding. The pandemic has accelerated structural shifts in our economy that were already underway. What we were thinking about the future of work and the requirements for reskilling and upskilling throughout careers. And now this high number of displaced adult workers in Texas are going to need specialized credentials or training to re-enter successfully the post-pandemic economy. And at the same time, our new graduates facing these dramatically reduced opportunities to secure the best full-time employment opportunities are going to be able to distinguish themselves with additional industry recognized certificates and credentials. So we need a new mindset. For too long, education and training have been viewed as fundamentally different and separate systems. The things that people learn in one system are often not recognized in the other. What we need, in my view, is one integrated system that delivers the learning and skills people need throughout their careers with a minimum of friction along the way. It has to be transparent. Workers need to understand the knowledge and skills they'll need to advance in their careers, and employers need to know what a given applicant knows and can do when they hire them. And this job of reskilling and upskilling workers, whether it's displaced older workers or recent graduates, is the responsibility of all of us in post-secondary education, including Research One universities. Our presidents and I are working to identify and develop best-in-class programs for credentials and skills recognized by industry so that we can offer them to students and graduates throughout their careers. Working with our partners at the TWC and the Coordinating Board, we plan to expand and create new short-term industry-recognized credentials that are in demand for recent graduates, stopped-out students, adults with some college and no degrees, and displaced workers. For us, this work's been given a boost by a national task force of presidents and chancellors of 40 universities across the country, public and private, community colleges that are rethinking higher education and how to maximize our contribution in the wake of the pandemic, the economic upheaval, and the persistence of racial inequalities in the job market. And one outcome of this work is our goal to create a wide variety of micro-credentials and certificates. We're going to take a hard look at labor market data before deciding what areas we're going to focus on. And most important, we want to partner with the private sector to meet their needs in terms of numbers of employees and skill levels. So we're going to scale up some of our existing offerings, which have been successful, but we really are focused on creating new ones in collaboration with employer, industry, and state partners. We want to establish pathways to students, recent graduates, and displaced adults, particularly the underserved and those at greatest risk of unemployment or underemployment, to lead them to new marketable skills and opportunities. And we're not alone. This aligns so well with the governor's tri-agency workforce initiative. We'll build on the strength of overlapping priorities of the Workforce Commission, the Coordinating Board, and the other institutions of higher education in the state. But this is a shift, make no mistake about it, from a traditional model that has worked so well for us to one that incorporates an emphasis on skills and lifelong learning. It's a big change. We need to do both. But one lesson of the last year is the dramatic change, even in higher education, which is not exactly known for its nimbleness, is both possible and necessary. So what we've accomplished when it comes to remote work, remote education, remote medical care, the acceleration of progress that would otherwise have taken years or even decades, is something we need to take advantage of now. And so my hope is that all of us recognize this and that we keep our foot on the gas. The shift to large-scale remote learning has opened the door to what's possible. We need to take advantage of this moment. In many ways, the pandemic has brought out the best in our state's institutions, but the work we've done and the changes we've made are a down payment on what we need to make in the future. And I want to thank all of you for the role that you play. On behalf of the UT system, I say thank you, and you can count on us to be your partner. And the more closely that we can align and work hand in hand with the private sector, the more successful Texas will be. So I thank you for your attention and for all that you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Chancellor Milliken, for your remarks and for the work that you're doing at UT system to prepare the workforce of the future. And good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Daniel, Chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to introduce our next speaker today. I want to introduce you to Dr. Kathy Banks from Texas A&M University. Since 2011, Dr. Banks has held simultaneously several titles at Texas A&M, which I'm going to let her describe for you. But I will go ahead and reveal the big reveal, which is that she was recently named, well, last week, the sole finalist to be the next president at Texas A&M University. Dr. Banks is a member of the National Academy of Engineering and a fellow at the American Society of Civil Engineers. She's from Kentucky originally, where she received a bachelor's degree. She got that at the University of Florida, master's degree at the University of North Carolina, and her PhD at Duke University. I'm a member of the Texas Engineering Experiment Station Advisory Board, and I've talked with her on several occasions firsthand about the different things that they're doing to serve students who are obtaining academic degrees, and then supporting the reskilling and upskilling in the existing workforce across the state. We've got a recorded message from Dr. Banks, and I want you to listen to that. And then stay tuned for a live follow-up from that recorded message from the head of workforce development at the Texas A&M Engineering Department. That's going to be Dr. Cindy Lawley.
Hello, My name is Kathy Banks, and I'm the Agency Director of the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station, known as TxEDC. I also serve as Dean of the Texas A&M University College of Engineering and Vice Chancellor of Engineering and National Labs for the Texas A&M University System. I would like to thank Workforce Commission Chairman Brian Daniel for including me in today's program. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you more about our partnerships with community colleges and university campuses across the state in support of the Governor's Tri-Agency Workforce Initiative. The Texas A&M University System and its 11 universities and 8 state agencies are committed to our land-grant mission of providing access to education and training opportunities to all who seek them. For Texas to remain competitive on the national and international level, it is imperative that we invest in workforce development and training programs. Furthermore, it is critically important that we continuously scan the horizon to forecast what kinds of jobs are needed and which industries will be best served through thoughtful preparation of the workforce. The Texas A&M University System has been a strong supporter of the state's 60 by 30 plan. We wholeheartedly agree that the future of this state depends on a skilled and dynamic workforce. In fact, the Texas A&M system is so committed to our workforce development priorities that TxEDC has developed an entire program of staff who are strategically growing our footprint in this area. This team is focused on all education, not only providing opportunities for 2- and 4-year degrees in competitive fields, but also influencing the future workforce in our grade schools and middle schools. We are very proud of our efforts, and I would like to introduce Dr. Cindy Lawley, TxEDC's Assistant Agency Director for Workforce Development and Regional Divisions, to provide greater detail on these programs.
Thank you. And first, I'd like to talk just a little bit about TxEDC, the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station. So TxEDC's mission is to perform high-impact engineering research driven by real-world problems. We strengthen and expand the state's technical workforce through education and training, and we partner with industry to develop commercialized transformational technologies. The goals of this agency are very well aligned with what this virtual seminar is today. So identifying the strategies of how we're going to do future investments in workforce training programs. Our professional and continuing education division of TxEDC has trained over 60,000 professionals in the last 5 years. This training consists of a variety of short courses and certificates such as cybersecurity, additive manufacturing, process safety, robotics, engineering management, biopharmaceutical engineering, data science, machine learning, Six Sigma, and many others. We have a K-12 division that has trained TxEDC that has trained over 18,000 teachers, administrators, and guidance counselors over the last 3 years. Over that same period, TxEDC has also reached more than 20,000 K-12 students through multiple programs, including our Aggies Invent Junior, where students team up with solutions to engineering challenges, our High School Aerospace Scholars Program, our Texas Science and Engineering Fair, and our mobile Maker U fabrication trailer that goes out and visits schools statewide. We participate in STEM festivals and after-school clubs, and we conduct many recruiting events at campuses across the state. But as Dean Banks said, getting back to the Tri-Agency Initiative, I want to share some of the details about how TxEDC has contributed to the 60 by 30 plan. We're striving to help Texas reach their 60% Texans efforts to earn a certificate degree by 2030. For our completion goal, which is at least 550,000 students completing a certificate by 2030, Texas A&M College of Engineering has graduated over 17,000 students in the last 5 years. Additionally, more than 60,000 individuals have been trained through our TxEDC workforce programs. For our marketable skills goal, which is guiding public institutions of higher education to produce graduates with marketable skills, the College of Engineering works very closely with our professional engineering advisory councils and our industry partners to identify exactly what those skill needs are from employers. We provide students with both technical skills and applied hands-on learning to make them more marketable. For the student debt goal, which is to structure loan debt less than 60% of the average first wages, we're very excited about the College of Engineering Engineering Academy program that was established in 2015. A first of its kind engineering partnership. It selects two-year institutions across the state. Students are co-enrolled at their two-year local college and at Texas A&M at the same time. We send our engineering faculty to teach those engineering courses at that campus while they're taking their core courses there at that semester. This allows students to live at home. They can adjust to college life, and they can save significant money by doing so. Many students can save up to $50,000 over the course of a 4-year program by going through the engineering academies. Since 2015, more than 1,500 students have enrolled in these engineering academy programs at 6 locations across Texas. We're in Austin in partnership with the Austin Community College. We're in Brenham in partnership with the Blinn College District. In Dallas, we partner with the Dallas College. In Houston, we're partnership with the Houston Community College. In Midland, we're partnership with the Midland College. And in San Antonio, we partner with the Alamo College Day. To date, more than 80 students have graduated from Texas A&M engineering degree through our Engineering Academy program. But one area that we've been targeting at Texas A&M that is extremely important to the state of Texas is manufacturing. As you know, Texas manufacturers employ 850,000 people across 18,000 companies. That makes Texas the second largest manufacturing state behind California. Manufacturing generates 15% of the state's total GDP, and the vast majority, 95% of Texas manufacturers employ fewer than 100 people. Each legislative session, TxEDC works hard to educate the state legislators about the needs for upskilling and reskilling, as you've heard recently. This session, TxEDC has proposed an exceptional item request specifically about manufacturing industry sectors in Texas. In order for Texas to maintain nationally competitive position, the state must invest in a workforce training that'll sustain the skilled talent pipeline. That's why TxEDC has proposed a funding request of $5 million over the next biennium to support the critical needs in manufacturing workforce development. The main objective of this program is to issue 2,500 industry recognized professional training certificates by 2023. We're focusing specifically on 2 areas: smart manufacturing technology and manufacturing security. This initiative would also contribute directly toward the goals of the government's tri-agency task force. So now I'd like to take just a moment and pivot over to share what another agency in engineering we're doing, the Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, or TxEDC, as many of you know. TxEDC's mission is to develop a skilled workforce that enhances public safety, security, and economic growth of Texas through training, technical assistance programs, and emergency response. In addition to the agency headquarters that are here in the Bryan College Station area, TxEDC has locations throughout Texas. In Galveston, TxEDC operates the Center for Marine Training and Safety. In Houston, they operate the Texas Manufacturing Assistance Training Center. In Mesquite, they operate the OSHA Training Institute Education Center. And in San Antonio, the H.B. Zachary Training Institute. For more than 20 years, TxEDC has been helping manufacturers improve their processes, their profitability, and their personnel through the Texas Manufacturing Assistance Center, or the TMAC, which many of you have heard of, which is the state's lead for congressionally funded programs, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST program, Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the MEP. And the focus on this program is on small and medium-sized manufacturing firms with less than 250 employees. TMAC's broken up into regions across the state of Texas that TxEDC serves, including the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. Through a team of field engineers and practitioners, TxEDC and TMAC work to provide sustainable solutions by looking at technical systems, management systems, and business culture at various companies. Through the 2019-2020 fiscal year, TxEDC and TMAC served almost 100 companies through a variety of technical projects. As a result of these projects, these companies reported $52 million in new sales, $100 million in retained sales, nearly $21 million in cost savings, $50 million of new investments, and they contributed to more than 1,000 new and retained jobs through these training programs. TxEDC also offers manufacturing competencies, which include the lean business model assessments and champion training, supply chain optimization, plant scheduling optimization utilizing the theory of constraints, quality and ISO service training, trainings within industry. They do OSHA and industrial safety training, cybersecurity and smart manufacturing assessment. So there's been a lot of success stories. For example, KW Industries, a light manufacturer that reached $5 million in new sales and penetration into a new market. The Gretna Machine Shop, it's a provider of precision components for all industries and reduced ordered lead time by 67%. Acre Biomarine, the world leader in supplying krill products, tripled production and expanded its facility footprint. Phoenix Plastics, an engineering-grade plastic additive production operation that gained ISO 9001:2015 registration in only 4 months' time. And I'd be remiss to mention that TxEDC and TMAC's impact following the devastating events like Hurricane Harvey, Ike, and Laura. TxEDC and TMAC conducted assessments and assisted when the Texas manufacturers needed it most. Outside of TMAC for the past 10 years, TxEDC has also developed a great working relationship with oil and gas manufacturers and their supply chains across the state. With many major brands as customers, TxEDC has provided hazmat and industrial firefighting training, as well as OSHA training and corporate teams across the globe. In 2019 alone, over 1,600 classes were delivered training to more than 17,000 participants. So all of these examples above demonstrate the important contribution TxEDC has made through the TMAC to such an important industry. So I'd like to take an opportunity to encourage everyone to contact TxEDC or TxEDC with any opportunities for collaboration, as well as ways to explore partnerships. So I'd like to conclude those remarks there. I'd like to welcome your questions through the moderator and we'll respond. We'd also like to thank Chancellor Chairman Daniel and Mr. Allen for your leadership in this. We're really excited about this opportunity and we are confident that it's going to lay a foundation for workforce throughout the state. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lawley. And please convey our thanks to Dr. Banks for the video that she contributed. We really appreciate your engagement. Lots of exciting things going on here in the state. We're so glad we have an opportunity to hear about that here today. There'll be a chance for questions toward the end of the program. So Dr. Lawley is going to stick around. If you've got a question for her, let us know what that is through the chat function. We'll have an opportunity to do that. But we've got one more speaker before we get there. I told you we were going to have an action-packed day, and we are. Our next speaker is Dr. Monica Thompson. She's the Executive Director of Career Services at the University of Houston on their main campus. Dr. Thompson brings a wealth of experience ranging from working as a human resource professional in both corporate and nonprofit settings to an administrator and educator at post-secondary schools. At the University of Houston, she provides strategic vision to a team of more than 25 professional staff members and student assistants that serve more than 45,000 students, and they help them find internships and jobs. Dr. Thompson's a native Houstonian. She's a product of HISD's Lamar High School in the Business Magnet program and a first-generation college graduate. She received her Doctorate of Education in Ethical Leadership from the University of St. Thomas. She holds a Master of Science in Educational Administration and Human Resources Development from Texas A&M University and a bachelor's degree in Business Administration with an emphasis in management and a minor in accounting from Texas State University. Dr. Thompson currently serves as past president of the Houston Area Consortium of Career Centers and serves on the University of Houston Strategic Plan Implementation Work Group. Dr. Thompson, we're looking forward to hearing from you about your work at the University of Houston and how you support the future workforce of Texas.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I feel honored to be part of this esteemed panel today, and just really excited to highlight our collaborative efforts and those winning strategies for workforce development that can be leveraged statewide. So I have taken some notes, and I'm going to just pace myself in case you want to take notes alongside of what I am communicating today. So these strategies that I want to share are strategies that we have incorporated at the University of Houston, as well as from what I know of the members of the Houston Area Consortium of Career Services. So within the state of Texas, there are probably 3 or 4 other consortiums. So if you're not part of one as a school or an employer, please get in contact with me and we'll get you connected. But we call ours HACK. And so HACK makes up of about 13 schools. So we meet monthly and we talk about strategies. So a lot of what we're doing, I see statewide, but one of the things that I really want to talk about today is career services. We have many constituents. So we have students, faculty, employers, alumni, and parents, as well as family. So our constituents make career services the central hub and liaison. And so it's really crucial that as we are wanting to implement, the Texas 60 by 30 plan and all of these strategies that we've heard today, we want to make sure that career services is number one priority in the strategic planning process for the universities, as well as the implementation. And I know firsthand that that is really crucial because as part of the implementation team, we're looking at how do we increase more learning opportunities? How do we involve career services in the education process? How do we have more internship opportunities? That's what's going to make this workforce competitive if they're getting those internship opportunities early on. So a winning strategy for intentional growth in student awareness, intentional strategy for employer development is to use the data, do a SWOT analysis, use the technology, use the innovation. And I'm going to give examples of those to develop the relevant programming, also creating a stronger brand within career services and your university to brand, that return on investment of why employers should come to your campus. So if we look at the data, know your students' demographics. I'm going to go back and forth between national and the demographics at University of Houston, just to give you an example. So know your student demographics, your workforce demands. I know University of Houston sits in the 4th largest city in the US, and we have a lot of prominent industries here and a lot of Fortune 500 companies, as well as 1,000 companies. So know what your greatest strength is. And we all know that sometimes our greatest strength could be our weakness. So for example, a great strength of University of Houston is our diverse population. We are the second most ethnically diverse population. And so what does that mean to an employer? That means a lot. If we're wanting them to come to campus, we need to make sure our branding includes that we have a diverse student population and where those students are majoring that meet the demands of the workforce. So that's important to know, as well as us knowing that more than 50% of our students are first generation. So having worked at a PWI, predominantly white institution, that programming and that data and analysis is going to look different for programming for majority first generation students. So even down to career education, awareness, starting early on, because many of these students have not been exposed to career. And then I would also say, aside from being first generation, we know that in 2030, the majority of the workforce or the potential workforce will include our African-American graduates and also our Latinx. And those students or graduates of color are underrepresented in the prominent industries, let's say for energy or health. So a strategy that career services could help implement is making sure that we develop students in those prominent industries, giving them, even if it's an institutionalized internship or university internship, partnering with alumni, partnering with the workforce organizations, economic development organizations. All of those are going to increase those internship opportunities. And if we have the students, be aware of career services, not as they're walking out of campus, but when they enter campus, getting them connected early on to their major and their career and planning out those internships. That's going to make a huge difference, especially when we know the numbers now. So again, using that data really, really helps. And I do want to just mention another reason that it's important to prepare the students of color is because, again, they're going to be the potential workforce and making up more than half of the workforce. by 2030, and our Caucasian baby boomers will be retiring. So we need to be ready to fill that gap. And if we know that these students are already underrepresented, then we could be strategic and create internships and make sure that we're promoting and targeting those students so that they can be ready with those skills. And just so you know, in 2030, that's about 2 student classes away. So we're 2021, that's 9 years from now, just in case you like to do a little mental math. So I also think knowing where our students come from. I know we're going to have a discussion later in these series about community colleges, but it is a great opportunity for career services and institutions to connect with community colleges early on. I know within HAC, we invite them to our professional development drive-in series, but if students are transferring to, let's say, for example, University of Houston, it will make a smoother transition. And I think it's a winning strategy to partner with those community colleges about career education to make that smooth transition. And I do want to talk about the use of technology to connect with alumni. I mean, I'm a proud Aggie, so I had to find a way to put that in there. But as we're proud of where we have graduated from, we also need to take that same energy and connect with alumni to help increase some of those internships. And so I think that's an opportunity when we look at employers and demands and employers that are coming to our cities. Don't be remiss, think about your alumni. They love to hear from their schools. It's in particular if they're having to give back and help, recruit students or even participate in the career events. Another way to educate students, because many of our students, they work. Some of them have 1, 2, and 3 jobs. So another opportunity and a winning strategy would be to set up some job shadowing programs. So students can learn what a day in a life is like for Chairman Daniel, or Mr. Allen. They want to know, they know their major, they have their skills, their interests, but what really does the executive director do day to day? They don't know that piece. So the job shadowing and the mentoring would help with that. So that would be a winning strategy to help and further educate students on career. I also want to talk about those relevant programming. So we're going to have our industry, career education panels, but along with that, many career services, and I know I have colleagues that are on the call, we're teaching career courses for credit. And, a wonderful recipe is for that student. This is a winning strategy for that student to take that course their first year. Again, that's strategic when you start to think about implementing, strategically, how will you implement and get students to learn about career? We don't want career service to be thought of as an auxiliary, something they do after the fact, when they just really need it. Mom and dad said, go to career services. But if we incorporate it when they come to campus, and make it part of the education process, it will be very helpful. So, and there is a blessing in this pandemic that we can meet virtual. So we're able to reach out to employers, and employers are able to participate, in our events, as opposed to having juggling, going to Austin, Houston, College Station. They could probably, attend, if they want to, 2 or 3 events in one day at 2 or 3 different campuses. And so that's a huge benefit for those active employers. So that's why it's important that career services have a strong brand with why those employers should recruit at that campus. Another thing I want to talk about is with the virtual events, we can do more. We can have breakout sessions. We're doing this for a year. I'm very pleased so far. We haven't had a lot of technical difficulties at all today, but we've been doing it for a year now, that we can be a little bit more sophisticated and have breakout sessions and really maximize the recruiter's time and the student's time. Many of our students commute. And so I sense, and also our numbers are showing us, that we have more students engaged in our virtual events. And that's huge because a lot goes into planning this, and we want them to show up. So we have a lot more flexibility. And with this intentional program and, speaking in class and student organizations and involving faculty, and we have a big Cougar preview for juniors and seniors so they learn about the campus. And some of the things that I'm mentioning, other campuses are doing as well. But wherever you can insert career services early on is going to build awareness and is going to have that intentional growth. When I led this team, we were probably seeing about 5% of the students in our office, and now we're over 60% seeing the students in our office. And it's through these strategic, and I'm going to summarize at the end. Not done yet, but I'm going to summarize at the end. What did we do specifically that created that framework of high impact best practices? I just have 20 minutes. I'm working through it. So in addition to marketing and social media, I'm not going to go into Instagram. You guys could Google all of that. But I believe conducting employer meetings, inviting employers in. We as a recruiter, I know that we don't always know how to navigate the campus. So we would have something called Employer U. That's another winning strategy. And when we have those conversations, we can invite Greater Houston Partnership in. We can invite the Workforce Development Partnership in. But it's an opportunity for employers to learn how to recruit students at your school. Every campus is different in particular. And for example, at the University of Houston, the students are very lucky that they have pretty much a decentralized career services. I lead the main career services, but then we have 6 college-based career services. So as a recruiter, they need to know how to navigate. How do I post a job? How do I make sure that that position is crossing multiple disciplines that may be in several different colleges? So the career services, again, going back to that hub, we're going to help that recruiter navigate. So if you are a career services professional, be sure that you're having those meetings, and then even having it virtually is even better. When we had one in the summer, about 6 weeks after we had the stay-at-home order, we wondered who would come. We were seeing the layoffs, but we had 90 representatives at our virtual Employer U. And these were new employers that had not recruited at the University of Houston. Okay, so we're very, very proud of that. Again, partnering with the Greater Houston Partnership. They may be on this call today, but partnering with them as a consortium is really important, because those employers and many chambers are going to the Greater Houston Partnership or going to the chambers, and they want to know, they want to get access to the talent. So we want to streamline that process for them. So earlier last month, we had a corporate exposure event, and it was with their employer advisory board. And so that could be a winning strategy that we can leverage statewide, is to have those meetings so that employers know about the members in the consortium and how to recruit those students. And from that meeting, we will now have a career prep session with all the students in the consortium. That's a lot. And then the employer board. So that's going to help the students build their confidence as they're meeting with employers, because even though we all have jobs, the job search process is very intimidating. And imagine without the experience that we have and without the credentials that we have. So our students, they need to build, that confidence. And we have a number of workshops, but it's helpful when we partner with an employer to come in and share. And also that employer is building a stronger employer brand with that student. Because now if they're thinking about Target, they know it's just not about the dog with the red circle. They know about Target and the community and the work and the effort and those values that align with their values. They get to have that intimate experience through, this educational engagement. So just another example of pretty much a win-win. I also was looking at, the intent for today, and I wanted to kind of transition a little bit into some of the issues we face in preparing the students to enter the workforce. And when I think about the workforce, I don't want to just limit it there, because we talked a lot about that, but also preparing the students for graduate school and their application in law school, and just how early that starts, especially when you have populations that are first generation. I believe they're going to be the first graduates of their family. So they're obviously going to be the first graduates with advanced degrees. So they need that process of like when to apply, when to take the exams. And so we have a lot of prep around that. So looking at some of the issues in preparing the students for their internships, for planning purposes, getting them to understand the value of career services and how we can help with their major and career exploration. I just gave examples, but we still are on the journey to get them to understand that, this is a very important step. And again, just like the job search process can be intimidating, some students are intimidated to even come to us. Even if they feel behind, they haven't put their resume together. You may have helped someone get a job or you're waiting on their resume and they take forever. Well, imagine what the student is doing. They take forever as well. So they're nervous about this. So we're constantly trying to break it down, bring in our peer students, because peer-to-peer, that would help. That could also be a winning strategy to have, if you have student employees, to have peers help those students that have less experience. And then understanding that students are learning and looking for a job during a pandemic. Now it's tough on us, and we actually have a job. We're complaining about being zoomed out and all these different things, but imagine having coursework and tests and the pressures of doing well, or retaking a class, or managing a job, or having lost a job, or your parents lost jobs. And every day you turn on the news, it's some statistic about the unemployment rate. Even if it is getting better, it's still a little soft, right? So they take all of that. And so we know they have anxiety around looking for a job. So in addition to, resume writing and, interviewing skills, we really need to also deal with the student's well-being first. Because if I'm worried and have all this anxiety, it's really hard to, think about looking for a job. So we have partnered, and this could be a winning strategy, because we're going to be in this for a little bit. So if you haven't incorporated, some things you may be able to apply as an employer or as an institution, but for career services, we were able to partner with our counseling office and do a workshop on anxiety and career management, or anxiety and career transitions. And, we thought this was a good idea, but we also had some data to back it up. Everyone on my team I like numbers. And so we did ask the students, we asked the employers, how has COVID-19 impacted your job search or your employment? We learned that many of them lost jobs, or they had to push their start date back for internships, or, they just had to start a new search. So that's what we suspected. And then that's what the data kind of showed us. And then also, how are we helping international students? So bringing in our counseling office, we call CAPS, and doing a workshop on anxiety and career management is something that's really helpful and something that we'll continue to do. And I think, before we just try to hit all the marketable skills and get the workshops out and the engagement, really showing that ethic of care for our students and just where they are and meeting them where they are, so that then we can talk about the other things. So in your communication to students and employers, definitely showing that side of compassion. So we are fortunate to use feedback from students and employers to develop relevant programs. Also, in addition to being involved in the educational process, career services promote research opportunities. So there are a lot of research opportunities that undergraduate students and graduate students can take advantage of. And if you think about a university, it's kind of like a little city or a business, and every entity that a student could go into could be an opportunity for them to learn about finance and accounting. So we also promote student employment and on-campus jobs, and we're looking to turn some of those student employment jobs into internship opportunities. So if a student is on campus, they have that convenience of getting hands-on experience. Even though we're 3 miles from downtown and we're in the heart of Houston, many of our students, they're first generation, and there are a lot of needs. And so they may not have the transportation to quickly get to a job. So they have opportunities to work on campus. So to summarize, I created a framework that really involves having top leadership support and staff development as a strategy, having relevant programming, using the data to understand what your demographics are, what's your SWOT analysis, what are you doing with your strengths, how are you, dealing with your threats or your opportunities. It sounds very basic, but when you start to do a SWOT analysis, it kind of gives you a framework and help you understand where you need to spend your time. Looking at your employer engagement, your branding, your strategic partnerships in the Houston community and beyond. Because of COVID-19, we were able to connect with employers on the East Coast and West Coast because they could meet us virtually. And then also remembering that our alumni is just a huge part, and oftentimes they want to give back advice and their time and talent. And so connecting with them in those affinity groups. So those would be my winning strategies that I would like to share, and happy if anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn to have a further discussion. Thank you.
Hi. Hey, Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for your comments. It strikes me here today on the webinar, we've set out to really establish a way for people who are going to participate today to hear from all facets of higher education what types of strategies we're seeing across the state to really dig in and understand how schools are making sure that their students get good jobs once they're done with their education. And I think we really found the magic formula here today. We leaders of the state's, one of the state's flagship systems, the president of the state's globally recognized university, practitioners, executive directors at our state's prestigious institutions. The focus stayed on the student. I thought that theme was strong throughout. And it really, I think, from my perspective at the Workforce Commission, that focus on the future of work and what that future next worker looks like, needs to do, wants to do, that really is where the state is trying to focus some resources and understand how we can best position the state of Texas to have that workforce of the future. But the truth of the matter is I'm a parent too. I have two of my children in college, one in a private school, one in a public school, and have seen in action that student-centric programs that all of these institutions here in Texas are doing. And I got to say, and I want to take this opportunity to plug all the schools, the ones who were on the call today and the ones that we couldn't squeeze into a very challenging agenda. The work that's being done is impressive. Do take up Dr. Thompson on that opportunity to hit her up on LinkedIn and learn more about it. And I know that Dr. Lawley and certainly Dr. Milliken and Dr. Banks, they'd love to hear from you too. If there's something you'd like to learn more about their institution, or if you have an idea of how you'd like to engage, there's folks that are really ready and willing to talk to you about. But I think we've got an opportunity. We have a few more minutes left on today's agenda, and I don't want to lose our opportunity to maybe get some questions answered. I know there are some questions out there in the chat. Let me kick it back over to Robert. Robert, why don't you lead us off with the first question for today?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And let me also echo my deep appreciation for everybody that's participated today. And to the chairman's point, I think focusing on the student is critical, because at the end of the day, that student is the next potential piece in our workforce pipeline. And as an economic developer and a marketer of the state of Texas, I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter how many jobs we create or all of us create if we don't have the highly skilled talent to fill those jobs. So it really is critical that we continue to do this. First question, Chancellor Milliken, is going to come to you. And we're talking about the student, and we're talking about jobs. And particularly the question is this: jobs of the future. Many occupations that current college students will have in their lifetime have yet to be created or are just in their infancy. So what are you at the University of Texas system doing to make sure that today's students are prepared for those jobs of tomorrow that frankly may not be created just yet?
Yeah, thanks very much, Robert. I appreciate that. And I, like you and Brian, I appreciate very much hearing from Dr. Lawley and Dr. Thompson. I think we're all aligned on what efforts need to be made now to make Texas as competitive as possible and give our students the best opportunities as possible. So I'm very pleased to hear about that alignment. You know, I think there's the single most important thing that we can do in that regard, Robert, is to be aligned with the private sector, the employers that are going to provide the jobs and the career opportunities for our students, because this is where, you know, the world of work is evolving very quickly, and they are determining new skills, new learnings that are required to successfully participate in some very fast changing businesses. And it's incumbent upon all of us in higher education to stay as connected as we can so that our degrees and our additional continuing education opportunities, whether they're micro-credentials or even graduate degrees, are as relevant as possible. And we need to keep feedback loops. We're getting better at this, but we need to continually have this feedback loop from industry so that we can see how well prepared our students are, what our graduates, what additional kinds of things we need to do, and what kinds of reskilling and upskilling opportunities we ought to provide. I know there are some businesses that do this on their own. You know, we all know about training, particularly in the tech or very large industry sector. But, you know, my view is a lot of this ought to be done by our institutions. You know, this is our core business. And to my mind, we ought to be taking that, I won't say burden, but that piece of work as much as we can at the community colleges and at our senior institutions in partnership with the private sector. So it's really all about alignment. It's about constant communication, as Dr. Lawley and Dr. Thompson said. It's about the important feedback loop that we need to use. It's about using all the data we can get to stay as connected and as relevant as possible.
Excellent. Here's another question that's come in. It's a couple of questions. I'm going to combine these into one. It's directed to Dr. Lawley. Do you see enrollment being affected once a relative return to normalcy is accomplished? Do we think online learning is going to stay a focus? What's the university, what's Texas A&M University going to be doing to continue to try to enhance and increase enrollment after the pandemic that we're living in now begins to pass a little?
Great question. You know, we actually were very fortunate at Texas A&M, while many universities across the nation had decreased enrollments, that we saw enrollment through this COVID environment stay steady. One of the things we did unfortunately see decreases in were our face-to-face training. You know, through our T's and our TxEDC, you know, a lot of the opportunities and things that we do there require face-to-face. I do think that will bounce back pretty quickly as we're going to this thing. But, you know, there may be a new norm for a while. We talk about online education. As Dr. Thompson mentioned, we through full force had to get good at doing this pretty quickly. So I do believe that we will have more remote learning opportunities, both academically and through our continuing professional education trainings. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think it's a new norm for us. I think it allows us to go both nationally and internationally with our online learning, where we couldn't do that before. So I think there actually is an opportunity for us to expand in the remote learning environment now that we have gotten better. We've gotten better about it as institutions. And I think learners, both employers that are on the job, employees can do this. Maybe they're upskilling and they want to do this in addition to working. So they can still work full time and then do some of these upskilling at their time frame or the weekends or whenever it's more convenient, since it's online and they don't have to physically come to a location as much. And
big question. Here's another one, kind of similar, Dr. Thompson, that they wanted me to ask you. What aspects of the pandemic and the focus on our virtual learning environment have had an unexpected positive outcome on the university, faculty, students? And what do you think we've learned from that that will stick around once we reopen our universities fully?
Yeah. I learned that, or we have learned that, we were forced to just be innovative. We had a financial pause, so we couldn't spend a lot of money, so we really had to get creative. I think that was a positive piece. Many of the virtual career fair platforms cost a lot of money. So we were able to, someone on my team, Caitlin, she led our first virtual career fair on Teams, MS Teams. And so now you see a lot of events like this, but this occurred in May, very shortly after the stay at home. So I think being able to expand how we meet virtually, I think is one of the positive things that came out of it. We saw an increase in employers having virtual meet and greets, or if you will, when we were probably in school, they were called information sessions. So that's a positive piece that I definitely can see us keeping, because employers are able to just come to their computer and meet students, and students the same. Another thing that I think is really good is for us to, maybe we'll have some in-person events depending on the CDC guidelines, but we'll also do some virtual events, for some of our smaller ones. It is a lot on the staff to plan out, especially the in-person. So I think it'll allow us to provide more opportunities for our students. And we've seen now over a year that it can work, because the employers are showing up, the students are showing up, and the students are getting hired. And I kind of think that's why they go to school, to get a job. So if we can still get them hired in a virtual setting, I see no reason to still incorporate some of the virtual career education workshops and events.
I definitely think it's fair to say that all the tools we have at our disposal, we'll be using those, because I actually agree with you. And I can see all the panelists at one time. I saw a lot of heads nod when at the end of the day, students still want to get a job when they're through with their education. And
I'm biased. I think so.
I think that's exactly what we're talking about here today. Hey, I did check the chat real quick. There was a question here. Let me get back to it. I'm scrolling through the chat right now. This is for Dr. Lawley. This is from Hogs Automotive Training Academy. The question is simple. How could they become a partner with TxEDC?
It's a very simple thing. You can, if you look on the TxEDC website, it's Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service. You can Google, they have a contact, it will go through, and you can actually look at any of their different training options and their contact information directly on there. They'd be happy to talk to you with that group.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. I'm not showing anything else on the chat. So I know we said we'd be here till 11:30, but I'm going to give you some time back today, I think. Let me just quickly say some thank yous. Chancellor Milliken, thank you so much for making time available. Dr. Banks for the video. Dr. Lawley and Dr. Thompson also, big thanks to you. I know everybody gave up a considerable amount of time to help us. Man, I thought we had a great session. I thought we got some information out there that people can really use now. And then from my perspective here at the Workforce Commission, a lot of things that we can use to really help plan us for the future. And so we're going to be taking all this into account. And I know everybody has plenty to do, and I just can't say enough thank you for spending some time with us here today. This effort, this is the inaugural webinar and what's going to be several webinars. This is a follow-on from the last tri-agency initiative that we just completed late last year. This is an opportunity for the Workforce Commission, working in conjunction with the Texas Economic Development Corporation, an opportunity for us to surface those best ideas for what's going on to help build the state's workforce and get that information out so we can start a conversation. And that conversation is going to lead us to get these best ideas forward so that local communities can tackle these and put into practice in their community the things that are going to help them. There are a lot of folks that want this to happen and happen well. And I think it starts with our educational institutions, which is why we kicked off today with some of our four-year institutions and highlighted some of the things that the leadership at those institutions are doing. We're going to come back with the next webinar. It's going to be on March 24th, I believe, a Wednesday, 2 weeks from today. We're going to talk to some of our community college leaders because they play a big role in this as well. And it won't shock anybody to know that the folks you heard from today work very closely with their community college partners, just like we do at TWC. There'll be future webinars after that where we'll focus on economic development organizations, and we'll focus on career and technical training and trade schools, and we'll focus on what communities are doing to really further their workforce. At the end, after all these webinars have been held, we want to hold one more statewide webinar where we really lay out this conversation for everyone to consider so we can understand the best way for the state to move forward. There's not going to be one plan. There's going to be as many plans as there needs to be so that students can get the education that they need, pre-K through 12, post-secondary, all the way through job training, including reskilling and upskilling, as people need that to be successful in the workforce. Our goal for the state of Texas is to ensure that we continue to have the world-class workforce that attracts us here. Leaders in this state are thinking about it. Let me just point out some things we heard today. We heard Chancellor Milliken say that Texas's greatest strength is her people. That's that workforce we're talking about. He also said that clearly Texans know the importance of an education for a good job. And I think we laid that out well today. We heard Dr. Banks talk about how it all fits together in the tri-agency work that's done, but more importantly, how it gets laid out moving into the future. Dr. Lawley mentioned that industry engagement is critical, and she pointed out several good examples of what they've done. And then Dr. Thompson said, this one stuck with me. She said a lot of good things. Winning strategies are what's going to build a workforce statewide. And so we want that conversation that leads out of all these webinars to focus on those winning strategies. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. We've got wonderful efforts from our leaders at our educational institutions and others that we're going to hear from. And I can't stress enough how important it is for everybody to keep up this moving forward that we're doing, because I think it's going to take us to where we want to be. With that, I'm getting the sign from Robert that I think we're done here today. So we'll return a little bit of time back to you. Thank you again to all the presenters. Thank you to everyone who joined us here today. We hope to see you here in a couple of weeks when we talk to our community college leaders.